Hi, good morning. I'm Suting. I'm your host and MC today. So, brother and sister in the Dharma, we will start our program soon. Kindly be seated at a comfortable place. So, brother and sister in the Dharma, Venerable Arya Dhamika, Venerable Chandran, Dr. Yo Ka King, Dr. Ong Si-yu, Chairman of Eastern Horizon, and Brother Benny Liao, Editor of Eastern Horizon. Today, we are also doing live streaming at Facebook and YouTube. So morning to all of you. Can I have a sound check? Is everything okay?
I hear you well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so I just stopped my video because I might have the connections issue. So bear with us, and welcome to our first virtual
Recording
forum
in progress.
entitled Circular Mindfulness versus Buddhist Mindfulness, organized by Eastern Horizon in conjunction with our 20th anniversary. Eastern Horizon is a non-profit and non-sectarian Buddhist journal published by the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia 3 times a year. That is January, May, and September. It was launched in October 1995 with 2 objectives. Number 1, to present the teaching of the Buddha through the print media to Malaysians and the English-speaking world. Number 2, to present the common teaching found in all 3 Buddhist traditions. That's Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, for the benefits of all readers. It features essays on all aspects of Buddhism, interviews with Dharma teachers, features on Buddhism and modern life, news, and book reviews. Its editorial policy and contents reflects the vision of the YBAM, which is to present the essential core teachings of all the 3 traditions in a common and harmonious manner. In conjunction with our 20th anniversary and our first e-version of Eastern Horizon, 100 free subscriptions for 1 year will be given out. So you are welcome to scan the QR code or to fill up the link to grab this opportunity to learn Dharma via Eastern Horizon. Now, I would like to invite Bhante Arya Dhamika to lead us in paying homage to the 3 jewels, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and also in observing the 5 precepts.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Very happy to hear this morning. And as you just invited, let us start out by undertaking the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. We can do this together, line by line, and please repeat after me. So you can repeat silently on, and we'll just give you a little bit of time to repeat after me, and then we go gradually through the paying homage, and taking refuge, and undertaking of the 5 precepts, the 5 trainings. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Next, let us undertake the 5 trainings, the 5 precepts. Please repeat after me. Panatipata.
Panatipata.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana.
Adinadana.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu micchachara.
Kamesu micchachara.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musawada.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya.
Suramiraya.
Majjapamadatthana.
Majjapamadatthana.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante. We would now like to invite Brother Dr. Ong Si Yu, Chairman of Eastern Horizon, to give his welcome address. Brother Ong.
Thank you, the technical team, for unmute me finally. Very good morning, especially our respected speakers, Venerable Arya Damika and Venerable Thupten children, as well as our moderator, Dr. Yoka King, as well as Venerables, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen online who join us. So first of all, on behalf of the Young Buddhist Association of Malaysia and Eastern Horizon, welcome to all for joining us in today's forum on the secular mindfulness versus Buddhist mindfulness. So mindfulness today, I believe, is not as an alien term to many of us, and it's been widely recognized as a psychological aid. And many researchers suggested that mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is an effective stress reduction or as an antidepressant in preventing the relapse of recurring depressions. And this is of significance today for us to address this topic, especially as globally we are experiencing through this pandemic over the past 2 years. And in particular for Malaysia, based on recent research on depressions and anxiety during the third wave of the COVID-19, the results show that about 25% of the participants had severe depression symptoms. That means every 1 in 4 of us has got these severe depression symptoms lightly. And about 1/3 had mild to moderate, anxiety. So this is definitely an alarming kind of indications that, what is required in terms of psychological or spiritual support to the society. And we believe that the concept of mindfulness traces to the Pali words of sati, which I think in Buddhist traditions implies awareness, attentions, alertness, or even vipassana. It means the insights that is derived through meditations. And before this forum, we had an earlier chat, with the speakers. And while the secular mindfulness developed over the years, there's been a lot of integrations with the modern therapies and approach that may have, a dilute or deviates that is timely for us to have these sessions to actually discuss what is the similarities and what is the differences between secular mindfulness and the Buddhist mindfulness based on its origin. All right. So last but not least, I would also like to take the opportunities to thank our co-hosts for the day, namely the Theravada Buddhist Council of Malaysia, Vajrayana Buddhist Council of Malaysia, Buddhist Missionary Society of Malaysia, as well as the Malaysian Buddhist Kulapati Associations. And last but not least, also thanks to all of you who joined us today for making this event possible. And I do look forward and wish you all have enriching insights with our two remarkable speakers today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ong. Now, we would like to invite all of you to join us to take a virtual group photo together. So please switch on your video so that we can see you. And we'll have Sister Wen Yun to help us to take the picture together.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. We have an ad page over here. Please hold on. Okay, let's start. Page number 1.
Smile.
Page number 2. Number 3. Number 4.
Just keep smiling.
5. 6. 7. 8. 9. Okay, we are done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister Wen Yun, for taking the photos today. So all our subscribers will be able to see your photos in the coming issues of EH. Let's start our sessions today. And please allow me to introduce our moderator, Dr. Yeo Kah King. Dr. Yeo is the founder chairman of Malaysia Mindfulness Associations and a Search Inside Yourself, SIY certified trainer, who has conducted over 100 mindfulness workshops locally and internationally. Dr. Yeo, who holds a PhD from Oxford University in the UK, is currently a lecturer in chemistry at University Science Malaysia, USM. I will now hand over to Dr. Yeo for our forum sessions. Dr. Yeo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sister Suting, for the kind introduction. Good morning, the Venerables, brother, sister in the Dharma. Give me a good high honor to be a moderator for today. Let me first explain about the flow for today's e-forum. So we will first invite Venerable Arya Dhammika to present his view on this topic, secular mindfulness and Buddhist mindfulness, from the perspective of Pali Canon for half an hour. After that, we will invite Venerable Chutem Chodron to present her view from the Tibetan tradition. After that, after the two speakers have given their talk, I will take about 5 minutes to summarize some important points, and then we will follow by a Q&A session about 20 minutes. We have collected a number of questions from the audience while you do your registration. If time allows, we may also open for what we call live question. So at first, let me give the introduction about the two speakers. Venerable Arya Dhammika is an Austrian Buddhist monk ordained in 2005 in Pa'aw, Seattle. He was later initiated to the Buddhist techniques of Mogok, Mahasi, Shiumin, and Sun Lund. From 2010 to 2013, he stayed at Wat Pananachat, undergoing training as a Thai forest monk of the Achancha lineage. He studied Pali, Sutanta, and the Vinaya under Ayasama Agachita. In 2018, he was appointed as Sangha of SBS Monk Training Center, Taiping. The second speaker will be Venerable Chutem Chodron. He's an author, teachers, and the founders and abbess of Sravasti Abbey in the United States. Ordained as a Tibetan Buddhist nun in 1977, she has studied extensively with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Sabchak Sekong Rinpoche, and Kapje Jokpa Rinpoche. Venerable Chodron teaches worldwide and is known for her practical explanations of how to apply Buddhist teachings in daily life. She has published many books on Buddhist philosophy and meditation. So now, with great honor and respect, we would like to invite Venerable Arya Dhammika to present his talk. Thank you. Over to you, Venerable Arya.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning again, everyone. And first of all, congratulations to the organizers of the event. I have just learned something very interesting. Actually, it's a very good idea to do the group picture at the beginning of the event. Normally, it's always done at the end of the event. But then if you do it at the beginning, then even if the event is very boring or very controversial, the group picture still has everyone there. I have to remember that. Very smart, very smart. So, first off, as I said earlier, today I'm very privileged and very happy to have the opportunity to talk about a topic that is very close also to my own heart, about mindfulness and meditation. And just a bit earlier in the breakout room, we're having already a small discussion among ourselves, and I already discovered that there are many forms of mindfulness, it seems, many different aspects, many types of mindfulness. How many are there? I don't know, but we will soon find out. In fact, for the early years of my monk's life, I thought there's only one mindfulness. Until a few years back, I was staying with a teacher, just himself and myself in a small hermitage. And it's our Buddhist tradition that usually the younger monk will look after the senior monk, after the teacher. So I was taking care for his personal needs, washing the robes when necessary, cleaning up the kuti, sweeping, and so on. And among the tasks that I would do on a daily routine, there was also one aspect where in the morning, after getting up, I would go to his room, clean up a little bit, and then open the windows and open all the window shutters here so that air can circulate. We have this system, some windows, they have separate shutters, and you click them open, and then the next one. So a wall might have maybe 15 panels, so you open them, it takes a short while, then the second wall. So I would do that. And since I was also practicing at that time mindfulness of breathing, Anapanasati. So I was trying to maintain also awareness of the breath at that time while opening the window shutters. And on one day, it was quite interesting. So I opened the window shutters, takes about 5 minutes, the whole room all around. And then I was finished, was just about to leave the room. And I turn around and look, how come all the windows are closed? I just opened them. How is that possible? So I went back. Oh, it turns out that I opened them, but I was so mindful of my breath. So I opened them, and then I was finished the first round and just continued. And then I started closing them again. I did the second round where I closed all the windows. And when I was ready to go, all panels were closed again. And it was at that point that I realized, oh, there are different types of mindfulness. So on the one hand, I would say, yes, I was very mindful of my breath. I was trying not to miss even a single in or out breath while doing this activity. But actually, in some circumstances, mindfulness does not have to be narrowed down to a small particle or to a small part only, but it can and should be broader, more open. Because otherwise you do something stupid like I did just then, that you open and close the windows being completely absent to the task at hand. So I came to understand there's actually different types of mindfulness and purposes. There's open awareness, where you're aware of a large area of the different senses, or narrow, where you focus on the breath, or on the recollection of the qualities of the Buddha, Buddha-nussati, or recollection of death, of our own mortality. It's also a practice that is more narrow in focus. You have one topic, and that's what you are paying attention to. And these different types of mindfulness, they lead to different states of mindfulness and also of samadhi. So the more open and more inclusive mindfulness leads to a more dynamic samadhi, whereas the narrow mindfulness, which is also important, leads to a static samadhi. So then, other than narrow and broad mindfulness, are there also other mindfulnesses that one can distinguish? Well, maybe there's also a Buddhist versus a secular mindfulness, which happens to be the topic for today. And maybe if I were to play the devil's advocate today, then I would say that Buddhists have invented mindfulness, and anyone who practices it for other purposes than liberation misuses and abuses our Buddhist heritage. In contrast, maybe an angel would say that mindfulness is a mental state that is independent on religion, gender, or race, and other social aspects, as well as the purpose of application. So, of course, my personal view is that of an angel, maybe an angel with horns. But in the end, there seem to be different aspects to mindfulness. No? So, does mindfulness have its roots and origins in Buddhism, as it is often claimed and said? So I had a closer look at this question from the perspective of the Pali Canon, and I found an interesting discourse in Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses. It's called the Arya Pariyesana Sutta. And there the Bodhisattva, the Buddha before his awakening, he thought and he was seeking out different teachers. And two of the most famous teachers at his time were Alara Kalama and Uddhakarama Buddha. And when he approached them, he wanted to learn their method of meditation. And before he started out, he reflected. And the sutta explains and records the Buddha's, the Bodhisattva's reflection at that time. His reflection was this: not only Alara Kalama, or Uddhakarama Buddha, not only he has faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. I do have these qualities: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because the Buddha was not yet awakened, yet he already had these qualities. So mindfulness apparently did not arise just at the time of his awakening. And you don't have to be a Buddhist, because these two teachers, they were not his disciples. And the Buddha was not yet even awakened at the time. Yet he would acknowledge that they had mindfulness already. So from this sutta, it becomes apparent that mindfulness, the term, was already used. Sati was already reduced before the Buddha's own dispensation came about. There's another discourse in Anguttara Nikaya 4.35, where a Brahmin by the name of Vassakara, he said to the Buddha, Master Gautama, we Brahmins, we describe someone who possesses 4 qualities as a great person with great wisdom. What 4? The first is, here someone is highly learned in the various fields of learning. Secondly, he understands the meaning of various statements so that he can say, this is the meaning of this statement, this is the meaning of that statement. And number 3, and that's the interesting one, he has a good memory. He remembers and recollects what was said or done long ago. And the interesting thing is, again, the Brahmin says that the Pali word here is sati again. The sati is the Pali word that is used for memory. And this is even a teaching that the Brahmins were aware of the importance of sati for memory. And then he continued and also had another quality where he says that person is skillful, a person who is skillful and diligent in attending to the various chores of a householder. And he possesses good judgment about these chores and to carry them out and arrange them properly. So we describe someone who possesses these 4 qualities as a great person, a person of great wisdom. So again, he uses the word sati, even though clearly he was not a follower of the Buddha. I didn't learn it from the Buddha. So, the word sati, we've just seen, is used in the context of memory. In fact, this is the word for memory. This is the Pali word for memory. There is no other word that is used. In Sanskrit, it's smrti, same root, same word. And to remember in Pali means sarati. Sarati is also related to sati. So sati was in ancient India understood as remembrance, as awareness of the past. And it is for this reason that Venerable Ananda, I'm sure many of you have heard about him, the Buddha's faithful attendant who's looking after the Buddha for so many years. But Ananda had also a very outstanding quality. He could remember all the discourses of the Buddha. He would memorize them. So much so that when there's a Sangha meeting, they would always ask him, what did the Buddha say about this? And Ananda was declared foremost among all the disciples of the Buddha. Foremost because of his memory, foremost in sati. So again, we come to understand that sati here probably does not mean walking very slowly and mindfully, or labeling whatever happens, lifting, stretching. It may include that also. But Venerable Ananda, why he was regarded as foremost in sati, was on account of his memory. So mindfulness is actually a few different functions to fulfill that are all related to memory. And a teacher here in Malaysia, Bhante Akachita, he came up with the 4 R's of mindfulness. And I think this is a very useful way of remembering it. The 4 R's of mindfulness. What are they? The first one is to remember. Second one, to recollect. Then to remind and retrospect. To remember what? When you want to learn something, you try to remember it, you learn it actively. You already know you want to remember it later. So while collecting the info itself, listening to instructions also is one part of that. Second aspect is to recollect the info that was collected and that will be recollected later. And also to follow the instructions of a teacher, like in meditation, to recollect the meditation instructions. Oh, I'm supposed to watch my breath. The third aspect is to remind oneself to practice according to the info and instructions. So it's not enough just once and then you forget about it, but you have to remind yourself again and again. And lastly, to retrospect, to look back at what had just happened. So these are the 4 R's of mindfulness, of sati. And retrospect here refers to something that one has not previously deliberately remembered or memorized. But to recollect refers to something that you have learned, like during your studies or memorized, that you have deliberately remembered. But retrospect is like spontaneous memory, you can say, to look back. So we have here mindfulness and different aspects of mindfulness, and they all play together. Yet, nowadays, mindfulness is not understood commonly as memory or remembrance, but often or very commonly also understood as awareness of the present moment. Present moment awareness. And this is also very much in secular Buddhist circles, coming into the present, being mindful, being present, that is very much emphasized. There's a nice saying that I like. I don't know from whom it actually is, but the saying is that yesterday is history, tomorrow is mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's called the present moment. It's a gift, a present. So yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Or in the words of the Dalai Lama, he famously said, there are only 2 days in the year that nothing can be done. One is called yesterday, and the other is called tomorrow. And today is the right day to love and live. To love and live. So, if we try to find out about mindfulness outside Buddhism, mindfulness is not found only in Buddhism, but also outside. So where else can we find mindfulness being taught and practiced these days? And what's the meaning of secular mindfulness? Well, maybe one can summarize it like secular mindfulness combines ancient Buddhist traditions with modern psychological theory and includes many of the traditional elements of mindfulness, but without the cultural or religious aspects. So 40 years ago, John Kabat-Zinn was one of the first Western teachers to bring mindfulness into a clinical setting, making the practice more widely acceptable in the mainstream. And it involves being more aware of our habitual thoughts and tendencies and approaching them without judgment. It's a very important aspect of secular mindfulness. And this simplified, accessible version of mindfulness is now taught in schools, universities, workplaces, even prisons and hospitals. So the question quite naturally arises then, is there a difference in meaning between Buddhist versus secular mindfulness? Or are they the same thing? Or can one differentiate them in one way or another? Or maybe the differences are only in application and purpose, but mindfulness maybe is the same, who knows? So, to some degree, this distinction, Buddhist, secular, I think is actually not so useful because sati is the same in all contexts. Just as there is no difference between secular versus Buddhist joy. So joy feels the same in secular context and in religious, spiritual context. Or anger. There is no Buddhist anger or secular anger. It's a mental state. Or even mathematics. We don't have secular mathematics and Buddhist mathematics. 3 + 4 = 7. And even in Buddhism, it's not 8. Even though we Buddhists, we like the Noble Eightfold Path, so we use the number 8 for many things. But even Buddhists would probably acknowledge 3 + 4 = 7. Maybe it's because it reminds us of the 7 awakening factors. However, the object of mindfulness and the purpose of its application can indeed be distinguished in terms of secular versus Buddhist objects and purposes. So what is then the role, the goal, or the benefit of mindfulness in a Buddhist or a secular context? What are the objectives and purposes here? And we can together look at this slide here, where you can see an overview of all kinds of mindfulness programs. So the mindful marketer and economics, mindful cooking, real-world mindfulness for beginners, keeping calm and carry on with COVID-19 through mindfulness. Well, I like that one on the right side. Look at this one. Mindfulness for hangovers and other real-world situations. So if you're drinking too much, you can use mindfulness on the next day so that you can come to your senses again. Fantastic, isn't it? I wonder whether this is the mindfulness that the Buddha had in mind. But we can see here already that mindfulness has a large variety of applications for which people have found out that mindfulness can be helpful. On a more serious note, I think I would like to highlight the MBSR program. MBSR stands for Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, from the founder of John Kabat-Zinn. And he writes and summarizes in his book, Meditation is Not What You Think. He summarizes as follows. Mindfulness-based stress reduction was meant to be to be a safety net, actually, to catch people who were falling through the cracks of the mainstream medical and healthcare system, and challenge them to do something for themselves, to participate in their own path to greater health and well-being. So mindfulness-based stress reduction was not meant to be a new medical treatment or a therapy. Rather, it was meant to be a self-educational public health intervention. End quote. So this is one of the very popular secular applications of mindfulness to reduce stress, or even for post-traumatic stress disorder, for people coming back from war, mindfulness is used. Mindfulness interventions are used in this context. Also for pain. So the instructions are usually along the lines of the sensations themselves, them and proliferating about their causes and their future projection. Maybe I will die from this, and a lot of worry, fear, by the mind coming up with stories and catastrophizing. So by merely observing the sensations themselves, we can cut through much of the extra dukkha, the extra suffering that is actually quite optional only. Of course, everyone has own different pain threshold. I would say I can handle pain until it hurts. So, complement of ADD for attention deficit disorder, they're often a combination of medication and mindfulness-based practices. Seems to be working very well. So medication plus meditation. Sounds almost the same, huh? And among these two types of treatments, meditation is probably the preferable one, at least from my perspective, because it comes with no side effects. Or very rare that somebody would have some negative side effects from meditation. And I would say the greatest danger of side effect from mindfulness practice, meditation, Buddhist practice is that you attain Nibbana, that you completely overcome all suffering. Also not so bad, huh? So, as I mentioned earlier, mindfulness in secular settings is often thought to be non-judgmental, where you don't evaluate and you don't judge your experience. So can secular mindfulness or can mindfulness be non-judgmental? Well, depends on how they define it. So everybody can define terms as he wishes, and the mental state, can mindfulness be without judgment? Yes, it is possible. But can it also be with judgment? Maybe we'll look at that also. Or can there be types of judgment that are justifiable? So now I've summarized a few applications of secular mindfulness. I would like now to highlight some Buddhist aspects and objectives and purposes of mindfulness practice. Because in Buddhism, mindfulness is part of the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to Nibbana. There's a very clear objective for why mindfulness is practiced in the Buddhist context. It's a tool. It's a tool, among other tools. There are 8 tools in the Noble Eightfold Path that are meant to lead to liberation. And the mindfulness of Buddhism is not just mere mindfulness. We call it sammasati, right mindfulness. And right mindfulness, it becomes right for mindfulness because of the presence also of other path factors, especially right view. So it's not just how strong your mindfulness is, but also whether there's a right understanding, right perspective, right view of the Four Noble Truths. Or maybe even an acceptance of different planes of existence, of rebirth. In Buddhism, this is also part and parcel of right view. And to qualify as right mindfulness, so these other path factors, right action, they are also important. So mindfulness alone is not enough for liberation. So if it's separated from all the other path factors, we wouldn't call it sammasati. It's not right mindfulness in the Buddhist sense. So what is then the difference between right mindfulness and wrong mindfulness, micchasati, or just ordinary mindfulness? Right mindfulness, I've just explained. Wrong mindfulness in the Buddhist scriptures is mindfulness that leads to a wrong type of liberation. This could be a doctrine, a teaching from some teachers or ascetics who think that certain types of practice will lead to Nibbana, but they actually do not. Maybe mortifying the body or undertaking extreme austerities. So they might also practice mindfulness and concentration, but because it's going together with wrong views, and it will not lead to Nibbana. So this would be called wrong mindfulness, micchasati. And sometimes there's just mindfulness. Like maybe in the old days, there were watchmakers or clockmakers. They would repair. You can bring a damaged watch, and then all the small wheels, you would open it up and put them together again. So you have to be very mindful, very careful, and also remember where all these parts have been. So this would just be called mindfulness, but not sammasati. I have not heard of many watchmakers attaining Nibbana. So many occupations nowadays require mindfulness, but it does not make them into a Buddhist practice or into a practice that will lead to liberation from all suffering. In the Buddhist context, sati is also a cause for another very important state, which is called samadhi, for concentration. It's called sati is the samadhi nimitta. Nimitta means cause, the condition. So sati is the samadhi nimitta, is the cause for concentration. So the English term mindfulness consists of mind plus full plus ness. So what is the mind supposed to be full of? It's full of attention, noticing whatever happens in its chosen field of awareness. And the chosen field of awareness may be small or large. As I said in the beginning, it can be a very narrow field of awareness, like your breath, or it can be a very broad, very large field of awareness. Like a farmer who may watch over just one single sheep, or over an entire herd of sheep on a large field. His attention is then directed to a certain area, which can be small or large, wherefore his mind becomes one-placed, cittassa ekaggata. The mind is not scattered, it's one-placed in one area, fully aware of what happens there. And as it can be seen from the example of the farmer, not only attention on one single unchanging object, but even multiple moving and changing objects can lead to one-placedness of mind, to cittassa ekaggata, ekaggata. So the word ekaggata, sometimes translated also as one-pointedness, doesn't refer to the object, but to the oneness and unscatteredness and undistractedness of the mind. It's not about the one object, but the oneness, the singularity, the undistractedness of the mind. So it's in this way that mindfulness leads to right concentration. And right concentration being defined in the Chula Vedalla Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 44, as one-pointedness or one-placedness of mind. Competent and intelligent, one who keeps out strangers and admits only friends, acquaintances, for protecting the inhabitants and for warding off outsiders. Likewise, the Buddha says, a noble disciple is mindful, possessing supreme mindfulness and alertness, one who remembers and recollects what was done and said long ago. So we can see here again the simile of the gatekeeper What's his job? It says that the noble disciple abandons the unwholesome and develops the wholesome. And he abandons what is blameworthy and develops what is blameless, and maintains himself in purity. So mindfulness is not just sitting there idle and just noting whatever is happening. There's an evaluation whether the object or the person who wants to enter the gate of your mind, whether those thoughts and emotions are wholesome or unwholesome, whether they are beneficial or not. So in Buddhism, mindfulness evaluates and judges to some degree. And in the discourses, the Buddha even often mentions sati and another quality together, sati sampajanya, mindfulness and clear comprehension, sometimes it's translated. And you could summarize it, you can say that sati collects the data, mindfulness collects data, and sampajanya evaluates the data. And as I said just now, very often these two terms come as a compound, sati sampajanya. And as a bear, they are judgmental, of what is wholesome, what is unwholesome. And also whether an action is suitable or not. Whether it's beneficial or not. Or whether a thought is appropriate, relevant, realistic. So there's a lot of evaluation going on. I would like to show you a short poem that I have put together a few years ago. It says, mindfulness enables the painter to draw straight lines. You have to be very mindful. But mindfulness also enables the philosopher to draw logical conclusions. You have to be very sharp and follow a train of thought. It enables the Dhamma practitioner to draw the line between wholesome and unwholesome. And it would also enable my own grandmother to remember when the frying pan is on the stove, because she tends to forget that. So mindfulness has various functions and enables people in various contexts to fulfill their tasks and their goals. And you can say mindfulness and helps and knowledge, they help to achieve a certain goal. But you also need wisdom. We need wisdom to understand whether a certain goal is worthwhile achieving or not, whether it's wholesome or not, because not all goals are worthwhile achieving. So there's an evaluation going on again. So in the Vedananupasana section of the Satipatthana Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number 10, there's a distinction made between, you can say between worldly, samisa, and spiritual or unworldly feelings, niramisa. So when you're feeling a worldly pleasant feeling, the person understands, I feel a worldly pleasant feeling. That's how the sutta explains it. And when feeling an unworldly or spiritual pleasant feeling, he understands, I feel an unworldly pleasant feeling. So there's a distinction made in and with sati, with mindfulness, between worldly and unworldly feelings. Worldly feeling would be a worldly unpleasant feeling. Maybe you have some knee pain, or a close relative or a friend has passed away just recently. So it's an unpleasant mental feeling or grief. But it's still a worldly unpleasant feeling. But there can also be unpleasant spiritual feeling by reflecting, oh, I've been practicing now mindfulness, but I've still not attained Nibbana. So there will be a sense of discomfort or longing and disappointment sometimes. So this would be an unpleasant spiritual feeling. And the same for pleasant feelings. can be worldly or spiritual or even for neutral feelings. And this is mentioned directly in the Satipatthana Sutta. So we can see that mindfulness practice includes or can include value judgments and distinctions among different categories. It's not just observing whatever happens. There is also an evaluation going on.
Sorry, Bante, a little bit run out of time.
Yes, I'm a bit mindful now of my time. I want to bring up one or two more points. And one of the questions that I sometimes have is whether there are any drawbacks or any dangers when mindfulness is applied to a Buddhist or a secular context. Are there any disadvantages of them? So maybe from the perspective of drawbacks of Buddhist mindfulness, well, some can say, and it's probably justified to say, that despite the countless benefits of mindfulness, it is not easy to promote its benefits and the many benefits of meditation outside of a Buddhist circles if the practice is so deeply nested within a Buddhist or religious framework. It's almost by definition, people of other faiths, of other religions, or people without any religion or any religious affiliation, they would feel excluded. And they may even choose otherwise voluntarily to stay away from what would otherwise have been a very potential and very helpful practice for them, and a very transformative practice. But because it's nested in a Buddhist religious framework, that can be off-putting to some people, especially if they are not Buddhist already. So this is where secular mindfulness probably has it easier to reach those people and bring them some benefits of mindfulness practice. And furthermore, secular mindfulness practice also, of course, comes with drawbacks. Ajahn Thanissaro, a monk of the Theravada tradition, American monk, he pointed out that a serious critique of the mindfulness fashion has been made by those who have noticed that businesses and corporations have started to offer mindfulness courses to their staff in order to help the staff to cope with the stress inflicted upon them by the work of the very same, in the same corporation. The suggestion is that what is happening is that employees are given a certain benefit, but the nature of which is to make them even more exploitable than they already are, and that they can serve better to the corporation and avoid looking at the harm that is inflicted on account of the unnaturalness of life that it is leading the occupation brings about, treating its employees as servants. So corporations have become very skilled nowadays of incorporating mindfulness, incorporating it either for the sake of making people more effective or less stressed on the workplace or less sick. That is all relates to revenue, of course. And then, of course, in Buddhist circles, there's also a commonly heard criticism that without right view about the Four Noble Truths, about rebirth, mindfulness doesn't lead to the permanent liberation from all suffering, to the highest benefit, to Nibbana. So then it becomes just a feel-good practice and a way to be A-okay with oneself. And in secular and New Age circles, mindfulness is described as a way of being, the art of non-doing, a way of flowing with nature, a way of presence. But you know, in Buddhism, mindfulness is not just a way of being, of flowing, and happily floating around in samsara. No, in Buddhism, mindfulness has a purpose, a goal, which is liberation, Nibbana. So that's why in Buddhism it's part of the Noble Eightfold Path. phrases like the way is the goal or the journey is the reward, they are not from the Buddha. So the Buddha didn't have a positive attitude about samsara. The solution to the suffering that the Buddha offered was not of making samsara a better place or of feeling a bit more comfy in samsara by doing some esoteric practices. No, the Buddha's solution was going to the root of the problem, of escaping and leaving samsara behind altogether. The cycle of birth and death and sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, whatever comes with it. So Buddha didn't regard samsara in a positive light where you make yourself comfortable. Anyway, regardless of Buddhist or secular mindfulness, you can say that mindfulness allows one to accomplish one's goals. Whether they are worth accomplishing is another question. And that requires wisdom. So even a sniper, in war times, a sniper, he is lying there waiting for the target to arrive. And then he will calculate the wind speed. And then very mindfully, breathing in, holding the breath, pulling the trigger, breathing out. Yeah, there's mindfulness there, very present. He knows what is going on in the body. But this is not a wholesome undertaking. So we should not assume just because there's mindfulness, therefore it's wholesome or beneficial. Yes, mindfulness allows us to achieve and accomplish what we want to accomplish. But whether that is a good thing to accomplish, a wholesome thing, is not guaranteed just by the presence of mindfulness. It is intention, cetana, that makes an act, a thought, wholesome or unwholesome. The purpose, the intention, not the presence of mindfulness. So mindfulness can come along with wholesome intentions or unwholesome ones. That's why we have sammasati, but also micchasati, right mindfulness and wrong mindfulness. I will share just two short poems that I have prepared here. The first one is that some people might say that, or maybe we ourselves, we think that you may feel that as if the mind is too agitated to meditate. This is like being too tired to relax, or too exhausted to take a break, or too sick to take medicine. So what does it mean to be too restless or too agitated? No, I cannot meditate. My mind is not calm. No, it's all over the place. I cannot meditate. Maybe another time. That's why we should meditate, It is to calm and tranquilize the mind. This is one aspect of mindfulness practice. So would we say like, oh, no, I'm too sick, I'm not going to take medicine. Wouldn't make sense, right? Even though we sometimes hear these kind of sentiments. And sometimes also we want to meditate only when we are inspired. But then, do we eat only when we are starving to death? And do we bathe only when stinking? And do we brush our teeth only before kissing? Or do we meditate only when inspired? No? Because if we wait until we're inspired with meditation, well, there won't be much time to meditate because most of the time you can't be inspired all the time, right? Daniel Coyle says, inspiration is for amateurs. Professionals in any kind of expertise, they don't rely on inspiration all the time. So you have to, whether you want to practice, like Ajahn Chah once said, when you want to practice, you're inspired, practice. But when you don't want to practice, practice. It is by consistently maintaining a regular practice that the skill will be developed. And professionals in any field of expertise, they practice and train day in, day out, regardless of whether the weather is right, the climate, whether they're inspired or not. You just put in regular practice and something good will come out of it. So the same should be the case also for meditation and mindfulness practice. And to close off my presentation today, I would also like to make peace with my earlier statement that I said that Buddhist mindfulness practice is actually including evaluation and judgment, whereas secular mindfulness practice is always about non-judgmental. Now, of course, withholding judgment and being non-judgmental is also very important. It's a very important part of the Dhamma practice. And there's a nice little story that relates to that. There was this small little girl, and she had 2 apples in her hands, 1 apple in each hand. And her mother came into the room and softly asked her little daughter with a smile, "Sweetie, can you give me 1 of your 2 apples?" And then the girl first looks up to the mother and then quickly takes a bite from the first apple and another bite from the second apple. And then you can see already the facial expression of the mother changing and being quite disappointed about her daughter. And then 2 seconds later, the little girl raises her hand and handed 1 of her bitten apples to her mom, saying, "Mommy, here you are. This apple is the sweeter one. This apple is the sweeter one." What do we learn from this story? What's the lesson here? I think it's trying to say that no matter who you are, how experienced you may be, or how knowledgeable you think you are, it is sometimes important to delay judgment, to give others the privilege to explain themselves. What we see may not be reality. People may quite literally hand us the sweeter apple without recognizing it. I think let's stop here and I look forward to also the presentation from Tibetan children and maybe a short discussion afterwards.
Thank you, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for the very inspiring talk. Now we would like to invite Venerable Tem Chodron to give her presentation. Now it's quite late in the evening in the United States. So over to you, Venerable Chodron.
Okay. Let's see. Okay.
Do you need to share your PowerPoint?
No, I don't have a PowerPoint. And I'm not going to make a presentation. We were each given a half an hour to speak, and Bante gave a very nice presentation for 1 hour. So there is no time for me to speak. So we can go on with the program.
Brother Benny, what do you think? Perhaps when the Chodron, you may just share about 20 minutes of your thoughts.
Yeah, I think we could still have some time.
We still have some time and we could extend a little bit the sessions.
Yes.
Oh, seriously, 1 hour? I was speaking for 1 hour.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I was not aware of the time. Oh, my goodness.
So
apologies. But please do go on. I think I have time. I hope you also still have time, and our audience. It will be wonderful that we can also hear from you.
Yeah.
So please.
I give you my time, Bante, and it is getting late here. And so I think we just skip my talk and go on.
Okay.
Brother Benny, is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you, Venerable Arya and Venerable Chodron, for your kindness. Perhaps I just summarize the article that I read from Venerable Tem Chodron from the Eastern Horizon articles on her view on Buddhist mindfulness and secular mindfulness. Thank you, Venerable Arya, for the sharing. I think the very important points made by what are the major differences between secular mindfulness and Buddhist mindfulness. They are different on purpose and motivation, as pointed out by Venerable Chodron on the articles, because the Buddhist mindfulness, the purpose and motivation is for the to attain liberation from the samsara. As what Bhante Arya has also mentioned, in Buddhist mindfulness, we emphasize more on the right mindfulness. The sammasati is to understand the nature of the mind and body, and our aims is to liberate from the samsara. But for the secular mindfulness, it may have different application for stress reduction and and so on. And then in terms of the context, as pointed out, the Buddhist mindfulness is used to practice ethical conduct, concentration, and developing kindness and insight. This is from the articles. And also that is in the context of the Four Noble Truths, to understand our suffering, the causes of the suffering, and how to liberate from the suffering. The third point will be the point made by bare awareness or with evaluation. This is same pointed out by the two Venerable. In terms of Buddhist mindfulness, we always talk in sati and sampajanya, which is mindfulness and clear comprehension or introspective awareness. We are using mindfulness to develop wholesome quality of mind and abandon unwholesome quality of mind. So as we can see, this when we have a different purpose and objective, it will lead us to a different goal. Okay, so the result could be different, and there are drawbacks and advantage on both mindfulness, or what we call secular mindfulness and mindfulness. So this is a summary that I got from the articles, and also I summarize what has been shared by Arya. Okay, so now we may proceed the Q&A question. I think I will post the question to Venerable Chodron so that you can share your view with us. Okay, the first question that I have, from the audience is to Venerable Tem Chodron. Is a Buddhist meditation leads to liberation? It seems to be. Secular mindfulness lead to a better lifestyle, like stress reduction and so on. Is one better than the other? What do you think, Venerable?
I think it depends on what you are seeking. If you are seeking to relax, if you are seeking to clear your mind of extraneous thoughts, then secular mindfulness is going to serve that purpose, and that's what is good for you. If you're seeking liberation, if you're seeking awakening, then the Buddhist mindfulness is the one that you want to learn and to practice. So it depends on the person.
So the second question will be how to switch from secular mindfulness to Buddhist mindfulness.
That I have no idea. If somebody is practicing secular mindfulness and they're satisfied with that, then they're going to stay with that. If their goals change, if what they're seeking changes, then they're going to look to the Buddha's teachings to learn Buddhist mindfulness. I don't think it's a thing of you start with secular mindfulness because it's easier or something, and then you go on to Buddhist mindfulness. I don't see it in terms of switching like that. But some people are attracted to one, some people are attracted to the other. If you start out with secular mindfulness and, like I said, your interests change, then you will seek out a Buddhist teacher and you'll learn Buddhist mindfulness and practice that.
Okay, thank you. So the third question will be, how do we apply the practice of mindfulness to attain wisdom and happiness in life?
The mindfulness that I've come in contact here with secular mindfulness in the States is not so much directed towards wisdom. It is directed towards finding happiness in this life, but it's more doing that through actually, I'm not sure, to tell you the truth.
How about Buddhist? How about how to apply Buddhist mindfulness to develop wisdom?
Well, that was going to be the topic of the subject of my talk. But
I think we still have time, Venerable, because we have half an hour for Q&A session. Perhaps we can cut a little bit of the Q&A session and have an interaction. Perhaps Venerable Arya Dhammika, you may have some question to ask Venerable as well.
No, I think what's good to do is what we did before we began, where we kind of had a group discussion and shared ideas. I think that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can also invite other participants.
Brother
this topic, and
yeah,
doesn't have to be limited to both of us.
Perhaps I think, perhaps I will start first because I am a secular mindfulness teacher. As mentioned by Venerable Tem Chodron, you will prefer to see that the Buddhist teachers stay with the Buddhist tradition and the secular teachers, secular mindfulness teachers stay with the secular mindfulness. I think I would like to hear more from you about your point.
Okay, because it takes a lot of training and a lot of practice to teach Buddhist mindfulness. It takes you years of study, years of practice to be able to teach that and have some experience. The courses for teaching secular mindfulness are a month or 2 months. It's very short. So I don't really see any purpose for somebody who has spent a lot of time with the Buddhist tradition and is able to teach Buddhist mindfulness, why they would stop that and teach the other thing when there's so many teachers of secular mindfulness. It's really the latest fad, the latest craze, and there's many people teaching it in many contexts. So I don't think we really need the Buddhist teachers to join in doing that. I think Buddhist teachers have it's a much more specialized thing that they're doing because it's leading to a very different goal. And the people who do that practice have a very different motivation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I must say, I'm not really involved a lot with secular mindfulness. And there's so many different teachers and so many different kinds of ways of doing it. And it benefits many different kinds of people. If it's used in psychology or many different fields, it can be very beneficial for those people. So I'm not knocking secular mindfulness, but I'm just saying that I see quite a big difference between the two.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think also.
Actually, I have more, maybe perhaps one more question that I will pass to Venerable Arya if you have anything to ask. One last question, from me to Venerable Tem Chodron. as what has been presented by Venerable Arya Dhammika, he mainly takes what we call the content from the Pali Canon scriptures. I would like to know more. How about the Tibetan scriptures or Tibetan canon? Is it a major difference between the definitions of mindfulness and right mindfulness in different contexts?
No, I think what he explained is very much the same in the Sanskrit tradition from which the Tibetan Buddhism hails. Yeah, it's very, very much the same. There are some ways of introducing the topic and really showing how mindfulness leads to the development of wisdom, especially the wisdom of selflessness or no self. Yeah, so there's some interesting discussion of that in the Tibetan tradition that I haven't found yet, maybe in the Pali tradition, although maybe it's there.
Ante? Could you please unmute Bante? Yes.
Yeah, already. Yeah, I just wanted to come also briefly back to the topic that you just mentioned also, that there's a movement from, well, I wonder actually how much is the movement from secular Buddhists or from secular mindfulness practitioners towards Buddhist mindfulness, and how much is the movement from Buddhist mindfulness practitioners towards secular mindfulness. And from what I see and think is mainly happening is that many people may start out as secular mindfulness practitioners, especially in the West, where people are not particularly religious, especially the younger generation often, and they are not keen in religion to start with. So having this secular approach, nothing to do with religion, just be present, non-judgmental, and so on, can be an easy entry into mindfulness practice. And then over time, some of them will find out that there's actually more to it and discover then also the Buddhist roots, so to speak, even though roots, I want to be careful because mindfulness existed long before the Buddha came along. And I think that it's going from Buddhist mindfulness. And exactly like Tukulin just explained, why would somebody who is already a Buddhist go out and learn a style of mind practice that can be beneficial, but doesn't go to the root of the problem, where you really want to solve suffering on every level. And I think for those who are already in Buddhism, I don't see much movement of them leaving Buddhism behind and transitioning to secular mindfulness. I might just not have noticed it, but I don't think that movement is so strong.
I think perhaps I could share a little bit of my thought, because I started from Buddhist mindfulness. Of course, it helps me a lot, but at the same time, I could also see some people also struggle with the Buddhist setting, perhaps as a vigorous practice that we have to practice in the retreat center, wake up early in the morning and practice 10 hours per day of meditations. Sometimes it scares people away, so that the secular mindfulness is more, in a way, is more friendly, because you can practice while you are sitting on the chair for a short time, and the language and the terminologies that you use, if you're not familiar with this term, sometimes a Noble Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, it could be quite difficult for beginners to learn. So I see maybe there are some advantages. If people like, they may start up with the secular mindfulness. If they are Buddhist, then they can explore more and go deeper into Buddhist mindfulness. So in fact, there are, many examples like this. For example, when I teach secular mindfulness to my Chinese audience in China, many of them started to get interested to understand deeper on the what we call the Buddhist roots, so that they will go deeper into the Dharma. I see there are some transitions there, but it's not necessary. If they are Christian, they are from different religious background, we do not push them into that way because we respect and understand their need. So that is from me. Thank you.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
It's flowing in both directions. And we don't have absolute numbers anyway. It's difficult. We don't get our hands on statistics exactly. I don't think this kind of statistics exists. So
Yeah.
guesswork.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. I still have some question with me here. Perhaps the two venerable would like to share your view. The question posted by the audience. Okay, so one question. Are exciting and thrilling activities destructive to mindfulness, like listening to music or doing house chore at home? Is it not appropriately in terms of Buddhist mindfulness? Can we practice Buddhist mindfulness or mindfulness while listening to music? What do you think, Venerable?
Please go ahead.
What would that look like? The person who asked the question, I'm curious. What do you think practicing mindfulness while listening to music, what would that be like? What would you be doing? I have some ideas myself, but I'm curious what that person thinks.
I'm not sure who asked the question. Perhaps I try to understand from her perspective, because for her, she understands that Buddhist mindfulness is something that you have to do in the retreat center with noble silence. So that when we come back to daily life, for example, when we are driving or we're doing some house activities, is it okay to turn on the radio and listening to it?
I would ask, what is your motivation for listening to music when you're doing that? Because in Buddhism, from a Buddhist perspective, it's our motivation that is the thing that determines whether our action is beneficial or not beneficial. So it isn't a thing of, is it okay or not okay? Can you practice mindfulness or not? It's, what is the motivation in doing that? Because according to your motivation, then, I listened to plenty of music before I became a nun. I can't say any wisdom came out of it. Maybe something from sometimes the lyrics had some wisdom, but generally there wasn't a lot of wisdom. If I reflected and just listened and watched the various feelings arising in my mind, what kind of feeling this melody brought or that beat brought or something like that, and then evaluated that according to, is that something conducive for liberation or is it something that is a waste of time? Then that would be bringing the Buddhist perspective in.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think we still have some time, about 5 to 10 minutes. Perhaps I should open for the floor. If anyone on Zoom would like to ask any question to the two venerable, perhaps we still have a little bit of time. Yes, Brother Benny or anyone in the room, if you have any question, you may raise your digital hand. Then we will unmute the mic and allow you to ask your question. Okay, someone raise the hand. Jim Roy. Okay, would we allow Jim Roy, Aloy, to ask question? Yeah, please, Brother Jim.
And good morning, good evening to both.
We cannot hear you very well. Could you speak? Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Good morning and good evening to both Venerable. Just one question. Is it maybe I understand the Tibetan tradition. There's one called Vikima Tree Sukha. I'm not sure if I pronounce it well. Is it possible to? My question is it possible to get enlightened or enter street without practicing sati? Is it that a must? Or I understand that.
I didn't get all the words. I got a little bit here and there.
Could you please repeat your question again?
Is it possible to enter the stream or get enlightened without practicing mindfulness?
Okay, is it possible to enter to the stream,
Yeah.
okay, without practicing mindfulness?
I would say no. But I'm talking about Buddhist mindfulness. Yes, you can do that without practicing secular mindfulness, but not without Buddhist mindfulness.
Yeah, I think from the Theravada perspective, it's also similar in that even, we have these cases where some people, they just listen to a Dhamma talk of the Buddha and then become stream enterers. But at the time of listening, their mind is present. And actually the Buddha says, he evaluates when the person's mind is malleable, wily, and ready. Only then he teaches the full truth. So he basically observes and sees the spiritual faculties in that person. And one of them is mindfulness, together with wisdom and so on. So only then, when the spiritual faculties are ripe, the Buddha will then teach the deeper noble truth. And then the person on the spot attain stream entry. But at least in that moment, there has to be mindfulness, understanding, reflection going on as a minimum standard. Without that, it seems impossible. When somebody is distracted, not paying attention, or very hungry, you can't absorb the Dhamma in this state. Yeah. Not even if the Buddha addresses you.
Also, the 4 establishments of mindfulness is one of the principal practices that is used to, attain the path. So if you don't practice that, what are you practicing?
Is observing suffering is also part of mindfulness?
Okay, is observing suffering is also part of mindfulness? Is observing suffering is also part of mindfulness?
Suffering is a feeling. I mean, it depends. Observing suffering. Are you looking at another person suffering? Are you observing your own suffering? I would say if you're observing your own suffering, and if you're able to differentiate physical suffering from mental suffering, if you can just stay with the physical sensation without all the elaborations and fabrications and trips that our mind goes on to make up, to get ourselves freaked out about our suffering, our physical suffering, then that could be a very good antidote to not getting angry, not getting upset, just observing the sensation of the suffering. But in Buddhism, you would also see, one of the 4 distorted conceptions is thinking that things that are by nature dukkha or suffering are pleasurable. So if you're able to observe your own physical or mental feelings of suffering, and then see that this is actually part of how samsara operates, and then extend what you consider suffering or dukkha to even include the happy feelings that we have in samsara, and that they're dukkha, there's something to be abandoned, because again, they aren't satisfactory. We get a little bit of happiness here and there, but it doesn't last. and we're disappointed and we do the whole thing again and again. Okay, so if you're observing, your mindfulness of suffering can lead you to a deeper understanding of what samsara is, and then that can lead you to develop some wisdom about not, falling prey to seeking things that are by nature dukkha, but are in our confusion thinking that they're happiness. If you can do that, then it's really useful on the path. Yeah, but mindfulness of suffering doesn't mean you just sit there and, oh, I'm suffering, I'm mindful, I'm suffering. I mean, we do that all the time, and it's not real mindfulness. It borders on complaining.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have the right view, isn't it? So establish a right view in the Noble Eightfold Path so that we can observe suffering and understand suffering. Okay, one very last question from Brother Wei Chuan Beng. Yeah, Brother Wei, you may unmute. Can we unmute his mic?
Yeah. Thank you both, Venerables and Dr. Yo. My question is this. There is this growing group of awakened so-called human beings, awakened in a worldly sense, which is described by Dr. Joe Dispenza in this book called Becoming Supernatural. So it seems a lot of people in this secular world now begin to have that supernatural ability. But it doesn't mean they can fly or things like that. It's just that it is possible to understand people, especially operating at higher consciousness. And higher consciousness has been developed through most of the methods through secular mindfulness, as I would interpret, right? So I just wonder, what is this, your comment, both are Venerables, about this, there is this rising group of so-called worldly awakened beings who are operating at much higher level of consciousness. So instead of just striking win-win, instead of practicing tyranny, but they move into looking after the world, looking after the environment, promoting much greater so-called positive energy for the world peace and harmony. So your view, please. Thank you.
One thing that I always, when I hear these claims and these statements, that comes to mind is, what do people actually mean when they use the word, I have an awakening experience, or a person is awakened? Because when you speak a little bit with the person, sometimes you find out that the idea of what they mean with awakening might be quite different from what you or I or what the Buddha meant when he used these terms. And very often, there will be an experience of oneness, of completeness, some burdens taking off, or sharpness and clarity of mind. Yes, but the Buddhist awakening includes that also, but goes further than that, I would say. There is also a sense of letting go and having eliminated defilements, that there is no more. It's not that you can cope with jealousy very well and you can diminish it quickly. No, it doesn't come up again in the first place. The same with anger. It's not that you're angry just for 3 minutes because you're awakened now. No, there's no potential even for anger, greed, jealousy, identification to come up. And I have not heard, to be honest, of almost any teacher outside of the Buddhist tradition who make this kind of claim, that they are completely beyond greed, anger, delusion, jealousy, not even for a short moment. That claim is, so even though they might use the awakening or transformation, awakening experiences, but the meaning is sometimes a bit different from the Buddhist experience. And what in Buddhism also we have many practitioners who practice for years and they have similar experiences. Yet they do not claim awakening, because for them, they understand that many of those experiences can be deep, profound, transforming, and often they are based on strong samadhi, especially on concentration. And you feel so joyful and nothing can hurt you anymore. But things are impermanent. Our life comes back sooner or later. And like the one famous book, After the Accident, the Laundry. So people do not even expect permanent transformations anymore nowadays. They're already happy if there's a sense of letting go, ease, and peace. But actually, there's more to be attained. And this is why you hear comparatively few coming from the Buddhist tradition claiming to be fully awakened. And so many, if you go online, any discussion forum, all the arahants hanging out there. What's your thoughts on this, Dr. Children?
I agree completely.
那个 kelompok 没有人扎的，是不是？
没有他要炸，我跟他讲。
Yes, I agree completely. I've not met any of those awakened beings that you're speaking of, Wei. So, you know, in my mind, again, it's like, what are qualities that are indicative of real spiritual advancement? Is it just having some kind of joyous experience or some kind of feeling that you understand people well? You know, I think we have to really look carefully at what are the qualities of an awakened one, and what are the causes that need to be created for that. Yeah, because not everybody that calls themselves awakened is awakened.
Okay, thank you, Venerable. I think perhaps maybe we take a few more minutes to have any last thing to share with us, Venerable Tem Chodron, before we end the talk.
I think what's so important in our life, whether our aim is secular or Buddhist, is to develop a kind heart. Because a kind heart enables us to not only feel peaceful inside of ourselves, but enables us to really connect with other beings and make a positive contribution to society and to humanity. Whereas if we're just looking for fantastic experiences, some kind of wowie, kazowie experience, then I tell people you might as well take drugs. It's easier. Yeah, if that's really what you're looking for. But I wouldn't advise taking drugs. Yeah. Once I was giving a talk at a school in Hong Kong, and these were in the days when Uri Geller, this Israeli man who had some kind of psychic powers, and he could bend spoons that were like in another place or across the room. And this little boy looked at me and he said, "Can you bend spoons?" And for him, it was like, so like, wow, if you can bend spoons, you're really great. And I said, no, I can't bend any spoons. And anyway, I don't think it would help anybody if I could bend spoons at a distance. You know, I think it might just make people mad because I ruined their spoons. But if I try and develop a kind heart, if I try and have compassion and tolerance towards other people, if I learn ways that the Buddha taught on how to subdue my own anger, yeah, then if I practice those, not only am I going to be happier, but the people around me will be happier. I will create better karma. I won't destroy the virtuous karma I've created by getting angry. And so, you know, that is much more useful than having some fantastic experience that then you want to tell all your friends about and put on Facebook and social media, because that kind of thing just turns into more ego, doesn't it? More self-centered thought.
Ante, anything to share? Last
Yeah,
few
just
words?
add on to the lovely sharing that we have just heard. And I think the mindfulness practice can really be the tool that leads to that wonderful state that you have just explained. And mindfulness is so important because it allows us also to step back and introspect. Where is the mind right now? Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? Is there mindfulness? Is there concentration or not? Is there greed or not? Is there aversion or not? And it is by having this anchor to which you come back that you also notice when you're not there. Whereas if we don't have an anchor, like a ball or something that brings us back, where we notice when we are not there, if we don't have that anchor, we might think, oh yeah, I'm mindful the whole day, I'm so present. But because you have no anchor, you don't even notice how much the mind is not present. So the mindfulness anchor can be a small, narrow thing, like that. It can be your mind of how is the mind right now, my state, my feeling, and Chittanopasana, with the emphasis on that. And that practice will allow the mind to not only attain awakening, but also attain the awakening that the Buddha was talking about, and also prevent from overestimating ourselves, as well as from underestimating ourselves, our own actual attainments, or lack thereof. So it's actually also good to know, you know, when there's practice to be done and more practice to be done, that you don't stop just because you have achieved some minor progress, some insights, some knowledge. So this I also can see a certain danger when people have a good meditation and then think, oh, that's it. That's all that has to be done. So also to understand that actually we don't judge too quickly. Like the little girl we mentioned earlier, and the mother with the little girl with the apple, we try not to judge too quickly. Whether the person has something good in mind, something bad in mind, we suspend judgment and take people on board, embrace their views, their ideas, and then evaluate in the line of the Buddha's teachings. That's
Thank you so much, both Venerable. I know it's quite late in the evening in the US, so thank you so much for the sharing from the both Venerable. Now I pass it back to our MC, Su Ting. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Yo, our moderator, and our honorable speakers. Before our program ends, I would like to invite Venerable Tondron to lead us in the sharing of merits.
Okay, so lower your eyes for a moment and rejoice at what you've done this evening or this morning, depending where you are. Rejoice at your own creation of merit. And then rejoice what all of us have done together as a group in trying to understand mindfulness, understanding the Buddhist path, understanding the benefits of secular mindfulness and Buddhist mindfulness. Rejoice at the merit that everybody created this evening doing that. And then let's take all that merit and spread it with the world, send it out into the world. You can even imagine it as light beams going out from your heart that you send to all beings, and it touches them and assuages their suffering and brings them faith and a kind heart and wisdom. So that by the power of what we've done together this evening, that merit can benefit each and every living being throughout the entire universe. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
many thank yous to everybody who organized this and everybody who participated, and may some real long-term benefit occur from our coming together this evening.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.
I'm so very glad about this event. It was a good occasion.
Thank
And
you.
also very nice to bring monastics from different traditions together on such an interesting and important topic. And I wish I would have had more time to listen also to your elaborations, even though I do acknowledge I was probably over time. Maybe not a full hour, but certainly more than half an hour. And
you were half an hour over time, and you spoke for an entire hour.
Look different on my side, but it's okay, you know. So I already said apologies for if I did take extra time, and I wish also everyone a good morning, and especially for you, a good evening, and all the best in the Dhamma and Vinaya.
Okay,
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brother and sister in the Dhamma, I hope all of you had a fruitful session with us today. We hope to see you again soon in another interesting and insightful e-forum. And for those who have not signed up yet, please remember to sign up for the free subscriptions for 1 year, which we're given out for 100th person. So thank you again, and stay safe always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.